the national curriculum. So that is a very rough, idea. This is the the change of the student population from 1990 to 2020. As you can see, the number of students attending primary school has declined. This is a result of the fewer children born in China. Whereas the size of the secondary and higher education is still increasing. Let's move on to the next slide. So now I'd like to give you a very brief introduction of the education system in China. How is it administered? Let's look at the pyramid on the left first. As you can see on the top, or at the national level, you have the Ministry of Education, MOE. The MOE establishes overall education policies and guides educational reforms. It sets the school system's curriculum and content of examinations. And it oversees some universities on its own. Okay? And it oversees the national college entrance examinations. Now, in recent years, the MOE has shifted from direct control to macro-level monitoring of the education system. It steers education reform by laws, plans, budget allocation, information services, policy guidance, and administrative means. Under the MOE, you have the provincial level departments of education. These departments approve the establishment of higher education institutions and monitor their performance. They also help establish many of the universities in China. And at the very bottom is the local level administrative authority. Counties and municipal governments would manage elementary and secondary education. So it is a three-tier administration system. On the right, maybe you couldn't see the words very clearly, but it shows you the different levels of schooling in China. I actually did some research on the Indonesian education system. I think the Chinese system and the Indonesian system is quite similar. So I don't need to explain in very much detail. So basically in China, students usually enroll in preschool at age 2 or 3 and leave preschool at age of 6 when they go to primary or elementary school. Students must complete 9 years of compulsory education. I know that in Indonesia you have 12 years of compulsory education, which is very good. In China, for the moment, it's just 9 years. Most students spend 6 years in primary school, and it starts at age 6 for most children. And this is followed by 3 years of junior secondary education. After that, this is the non-compulsory education period. You either attend a regular senior high school or you go to the professional track. I'll explain that in a short while. So the gross enrollment ratio for primary education in 2020 was almost 100%. For junior middle school, it was over 100%. So after you take the national entrance examination, you can pursue a higher degree by going to the university, and of course you go to the graduate school and then the PhD program. So it's, as I said, it's quite similar with the Indonesian model. Can we go to the next page, please? So I'm going to discuss some of the stages that a Chinese kid would go through up until the secondary high, senior high school era, the stage. Preschool education, as I said, typically starts at age 2 or 3, and this is not a compulsory education kind of schooling, but most people would send their kids to nurseries or kindergartens. And these places will combine childcare with teaching to help the children develop physically, morally, intellectually, and aesthetically to prepare for formal school. Next page, please. So the next stage would be primary education. In China, as I said, primary education is compulsory and it typically lasts 6 years. Children would start school at age 6, and the language of instruction is Mandarin Chinese, with the exception of the primary schools that mainly admit ethnic minority students. As you know, like Indonesia, China is also a country with lots of ethnic minorities. We have 56 ethnic groups in China. Mandarin Chinese is the standard, it's the official language of the country, but in many parts of China, the mother tongue is not Mandarin Chinese. So in some areas where you have a large concentration of ethnic minorities, their schooling is bilingual, both in their ethnic language and in Chinese. All the school years in China, from elementary school to most of the university, is comprised of 2 semesters, and they run from the month of September to July. And students attend classes 5 days a week. You may wonder about the school curriculum, as I have listed here. The primary school curriculum consists of courses that encourage all-round development of individual learners. The current curriculum was implemented nationwide in 2005. It encompasses moral education, Chinese language and literature, mathematics, art and music, and physical education. The 3rd grade curriculum introduces science, a foreign language, generally English, and comprehensive practice. This is a subject that may entail community service, information technology education, or basic vocational education. So pupils may remain with the same school or transfer to a local junior high school after the completion of elementary school. Either way, they don't have to take another examination. So let's go to the lower secondary or junior high school stage. The curriculum, as you can see, at this level expands on the basic subjects taught in elementary schools to include some additional subjects such as history and geography, biology, physics, and chemistry. The foreign language taught at junior high schools is most commonly English, although some schools may also offer Japanese or Russian, and students at some schools have the option of learning a second foreign language. And there is no junior high school graduation examination as long as pupils pass the 9th grade, which generally means a score of 60% out of 100. So the next stage would be the upper secondary stage. Beginning from this stage, you have 2 tracks. One is the academic track, and the other is the professional or vocational track. Let's start with the academic track first. This is the non-compulsory part of China's education, so the general high schools would last typically 3 years, and for vocational programs, it's either 3 years or 4 years. So in 2020, there were a total of 14,200 general high schools in China. They enroll 60% of the total upper secondary student population. To be admitted, students must pass an entrance examination that is held during the final year of junior secondary school in June or July. They will be tested on the core junior secondary curriculum, including Chinese, mathematics, foreign language, political education, physics, and chemistry. And students must also pass a physical fitness test. If they fail, they wouldn't be able to be admitted to the general high school. Once admitted, students traditionally had to choose between a science stream and an art stream at the beginning of the 11th grade after studying general curriculum, the 10th grade. However, the Chinese Ministry of Education has been implementing some reforms in the curriculum. So this has been changed gradually. And the change is taking place at different paces in different parts of the country. But the general idea is that the reform would introduce elective subjects and would eliminate the practice of streaming, since students can now elect subjects from both streams. You can either take, say, chemistry and history at the same time. Well, to take part in the entrance examination for colleges, you also have more choices. Let's move on to the next slide. So this is the vocational track. Vocational high school in China have different names. And these schools provide a pathway to higher education as well. In other words, you can look for a job after you graduate from a vocational high school. But if you really want to study, you can go on and take the exam, and you can study at a tertiary level. All right. So that is something I would like you to know. So there are many choices. Many vocational schools have also set up special pathway agreements with polytechnics that allow students to be admitted based on alternative admissions criteria. So vocational schools have been growing fairly rapidly over the last couple of decades. And this is especially the case as the Ministry of Education is encouraging people to take multiple job careers, career paths. It is hoping that more students could study at vocational high schools so that they can find jobs and they work as skilled laborers, skilled workers. After all, not all people are academically prepared to pursue the academic stream. So this is also something that China is witnessing. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the teacher qualifications in China. What would you, what are some of the things you have to do? How can you become a teacher in China? Traditionally, teaching has been a very respectable profession in China. In 1985, the government proclaimed September the 10th a holiday. This is what we call the Teacher's Day. And the Teacher's Day is celebrated every year. In 1986, the law on compulsory education pronounced that the entire society should respect teachers. The Teachers' Law was issued in October 1993. It codified protection for teachers' rights and also clearly stated their responsibilities. Now, although teachers in China are moderately paid, their jobs are stable and they're entitled to good benefits, which makes the profession popular, especially in big cities. And in some